I never thought my life would take such a drastic turn. Here I was, a regular guy living in Maplewood, a suburb where the grass was always green and the neighbors were friendly, even too friendly at times. I had a steady job at a tech company, a cute puppy named Max, and a wife, Jessica, who I thought was my partner for life. We were the couple everyone envied, with Instagram-worthy vacations and dinners with friends. But looking back, I can see that cracks were beginning to form long before the explosion. It started with small things. Jessica was always on her phone, smiling at texts and putting it down like she was hiding a secret. When I asked her about it, she'd roll her eyes and say something like, "Don't be so paranoid, it's just work." I wanted to believe her, I really did, but a gut feeling nagged at me. She had become distant, less interested in our usual activities. The late nights at work turned into weekends filled with errands, and I often found myself alone with Max, wondering if I had somehow missed the signs. One fateful Friday evening, things spiraled out of control. I came home early, excited to surprise Jessica with dinner. But when I walked into our living room, the house was eerily quiet. I called out her name, but no answer came. I shrugged it off, assuming she was in the bathroom or maybe outside. But as I wandered through the house, I noticed that her purse was on the counter and her phone was buzzing with a message. I picked it up, heart racing, and saw a name that made my stomach drop. Jake, our neighbor. Jake was a decent guy, at least I thought so. We shared a few beers and barbecues, and he'd always been friendly. But there was something about the way Jessica's face lit up when she talked about him, more than just neighborly enthusiasm. I hesitated, but curiosity won. I unlocked the phone, my hands shaking as I read the messages. They were flirty, filled with inside jokes and emojis that felt like daggers in my chest. One message caught my eye. "Can't wait to see you tonight, just us. I've missed you." My heart raced, and I felt a mix of anger and betrayal swell within me. I couldn't believe this was happening. All those little signs, all those moments I brushed aside as paranoia, they were real. Jessica was having an affair with Jake, my neighbor, my so-called friend. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I could have imagined. I didn't know how to process it. I felt like I was in a daze, my mind racing with thoughts of what to do next. I wanted to confront her right then and there, but part of me needed to gather my thoughts. I put the phone back down and paced around the house, my mind swirling in confusion and rage. Finally, I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I had to confront her. When Jessica walked in an hour later, she was all smiles, like nothing was amiss. I stood there, arms crossed, feeling like a lion ready to pounce. "We need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The smile faded from her face as she sensed the tension. "What's wrong?" she asked, feigning ignorance. I took a deep breath, fighting against the wave of emotions crashing over me. "I know about you and Jake." The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica's eyes widened, and for a moment I thought she might deny it, but instead she looked defensive. "What do you mean?" she finally said, her voice rising slightly. I held up the phone, the weight of the evidence pressing down on me. I saw everything, your messages, your plans, don't lie to me." Her expression shifted and the anger bubbled beneath her facade. "Oh, come on, you're being ridiculous. Jake and I are just friends. You're being paranoid." I felt my blood boil. The lies were so blatant, so infuriating. "Friends. This isn't just friendly texting, Jessica. I can't believe you'd even try to deny it." Instead of apologizing, she lashed out. "Maybe if you paid more attention to me instead of your stupid work, I wouldn't have to find companionship elsewhere." Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stood there, stunned, feeling a mix of anger and deep sadness. The woman I thought I knew, my partner, my best friend, was blaming me for her betrayal. My heart sank as I processed her words. Maybe I had been wrapped up in my work, but that was no excuse for her actions. It was a moment of reckoning, and I felt it all crashing down around me. In that confrontation, I realized something pivotal. I wouldn't be the victim. This wasn't about me simply accepting her betrayal. I needed to take control. It was time to think about what I would do next. I would make her understand the consequences of her actions. And with that, my plan for revenge began to take shape, though I had no idea how far I would go to execute it. After my confrontation with Jessica, I felt like I was living in a whirlwind. The days that followed were a blur of anger, sadness, and a determination I hadn't known I possessed. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and every time I saw her around the house, my blood boiled. I was living with a stranger. The woman I had shared my life with for years had turned into someone I could barely recognize. I spent hours thinking about my options. Part of me wanted to kick her out and cut ties immediately, but I also wanted her to feel the weight of her actions. I needed to make her understand that what she did wasn't just a fleeting mistake. It was a betrayal that shattered the foundation of our marriage. That's when it hit me. I had a unique opportunity for revenge that would truly make a statement. Jake lived just a few houses down from us, in a property that had been on the market for months. The idea of buying his house came to me like a flash of inspiration. I would not only take away the place that he and Jessica were using as a secret rendezvous point, but I would also send a clear message to both of them that their affair had consequences. So I made my move. I reached out to a local real estate agent, someone I knew from the community and who had helped us buy our own house years ago. I told him I was interested in Jake's property and wanted to make an offer quickly. He seemed surprised but eager to help. I kept my emotions in check, focusing on the business side of things. The thought of Jake's smug face when he realized I was the new owner fueled my determination. As days turned into a week, I got the paperwork sorted. The price was lower since the house had been on the market for a while and I had saved enough from my job to make a reasonable offer. When I got the call that my bid had been accepted, I felt a thrill of satisfaction. I was doing it. I was going to take control of my life again. In the meantime, Jessica maintained her usual routine, often coming home late and being dismissive whenever I tried to address our relationship. I knew she was still in contact with Jake, and every time I saw her texting, I felt my anger boil. But I kept my cool. I had a plan. A few weeks later, the day came when I officially became the owner of the house down the street. I felt a rush of power and a sense of vindication. The moment I got the keys, I headed straight to the property. It was quiet and empty, but I could already imagine the conversations and laughter that would no longer happen within those walls. I started making plans to renovate the place, but first, I had to execute my revenge. I decided to throw a housewarming party, inviting all our neighbors, including Jessica and Jake. I wanted them to be right there, in the same space they'd been using to betray me, while I reveled in my new ownership. The thought of seeing their faces when they realized what I had done made me giddy with anticipation. The night of the housewarming party arrived, and I transformed the empty space into a vibrant gathering spot. I had a few friends help me set up the place with food and drinks, and I even hired a small catering service to make it feel more festive. As the sun set and the party began, I could already see the first few guests trickling in. I played it cool, but inside I was buzzing with excitement. My heart raced as I saw Jessica and Jake arrive. They walked in together, laughing and looking comfortable, totally unaware that I was the one throwing this party. I greeted them with a broad smile, masking the storm of emotions raging inside me. "Hey, glad you could make it. Come on in," I said, guiding them into the living room. As the night wore on, the atmosphere was filled with laughter, chatter, and the clinking of glasses. I made sure to mingle, making small talk with everyone, but my eyes kept drifting back to Jessica and Jake. I could see they were starting to realize the oddity of the situation. "Isn't this Jake's old place?" Jessica asked me, a hint of confusion in her voice as she looked around. I feigned ignorance. "Oh, I just bought it last week. Thought it would be fun to have a little party to celebrate." I could see the realization dawning on her face, and it was everything I needed. The look of shock that crossed her face was priceless, and I could barely contain my satisfaction. Jake, on the other hand, was trying to play it cool, but I could see the tension in his body language. The way he shifted from foot to foot, avoiding my gaze, confirmed it. As the night went on, the atmosphere shifted. Jessica and Jake were increasingly uncomfortable, and I was reveling in it. I made my way to the kitchen to grab another drink when I overheard Jessica talking to one of the other guests. "I can't believe he bought this house. What a psycho," she whispered, clearly not aware I was just around the corner. "You mean that this is where you've been seeing him?" The guest replied, shock mixed with laughter. "SHH, not so loud, I don't want him to hear that." She hissed back. I couldn't help but chuckle to myself. She wanted to keep the affair under wraps, but here we were with all our friends gathered and she was being exposed. It felt good to reclaim my power, and I knew I was on the right path with my plan. As the night came to a close, I realized that I had managed to turn the tables. I had used the situation of betrayal to propel myself into a new chapter. My heart still ached from the betrayal, but I felt empowered. I was no longer just the wronged husband. I was taking steps to craft my own future, and that felt like a win. The real implications of this night were just beginning to unfold, and I was ready for whatever came next. The days after the housewarming party were filled with a sense of satisfaction that I hadn't felt in a long time. Jessica was clearly rattled by the experience, and I took a measure of pleasure in watching her squirm. Each time she came home, I could feel the tension in the air as we danced around the topic of our deteriorating relationship. I was no longer going to play the victim. I was resolved to confront the reality of our marriage and make my next move. I could see that Jessica was trying to play it cool, but her attempts were transparent. She would often leave the house early in the morning, claiming she was meeting friends for brunch or running errands. But I knew the truth. I knew she was still seeing Jake. Every time I saw her dressed up and leaving without a care in the world, my irritation flared. How could she be so brazen? It was as if she thought I wouldn't notice or that it didn't matter to me anymore. One evening, after another long day at work, I returned home to find Jessica sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. I decided it was time for another confrontation. I wasn't going to let her think she could get away with this. I took a deep breath and sat down across from her, forcing myself to maintain eye contact. "Jessica, we need to talk," I said, trying to sound calm even though my heart was racing. She looked up, feigning surprise. "What now? I'm really tired. Can't this wait?" "No, it can't wait. I'm tired of your lies and the way you've been acting. You think I don't know you're still seeing Jake?" She rolled her eyes, leaning back on the couch. "Oh, please, not this again. Can't we just move on? You bought that house to get back at me, and it's pathetic." I felt my face flush with anger. "It's not pathetic to want to confront the reality of our marriage, Jessica. You're the one who betrayed me, and I deserve respect. You can't just brush this under the rug." Her expression shifted from annoyance to something else. Was it guilt? I thought I could see a flicker of recognition, but she quickly masked it with anger. "You're the one acting like a child. I made a mistake and I've apologized. Can't we just fix this?" "That's the thing, Jessica. You keep saying you're sorry, but your actions say otherwise." I leaned forward, my voice firm but steady. "You're still sneaking around, still playing games. I need to know where you stand." She hesitated, her gaze darting to the floor. "I don't know, okay? Maybe I made a mistake, but I don't want to keep fighting about it. Can't we just go back to the way things were?" "Back to the way things were?" I snapped, incredulous. "You mean pretend everything is fine while you're sleeping with another man? That's not going to happen." The room fell silent, and I could see the walls closing in on her. I felt a surge of sadness mixed with rage. I loved this woman, or at least the woman I thought I knew. But that person was gone, replaced by someone who was willing to risk everything we built together for a fling. I took a moment to gather my thoughts as I watched her squirm. "Look, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I will not be part of a relationship where I'm constantly wondering if you're being honest with me. I deserve better than that." She looked up at me, her eyes brimming with tears. "What do you want from me then? Do you want me to leave? Is that what you really want?" I could feel my heart breaking. I didn't want her to leave. I wanted her to own up to her mistakes and fight for our marriage. But part of me felt like I was fighting a losing battle. "I want you to want to fix this, not just because you feel guilty, but because you care about us, about me. But right now, I don't see that." In that moment, I realized how much I was willing to endure. I wanted to fight for my marriage, but I needed clarity. I had to be the one to take the reins. "So here's what I propose," I said, my voice steady. "I want us to take a break, time apart, to really think about what we want. No contact with Jake, no contact with me, just space." Her expression shifted from pleading to disbelief. "You can't be serious. You think that's going to help?" "I think it's necessary," I replied. "We need to understand what we want. I need to know if you can handle the consequences of your actions." She shook her head, frustration apparent. "You're being dramatic. You don't have to do this." "Maybe I do," I said. "I'm not going to sit here and let you play both sides anymore. I want to know if you truly want this marriage or if you're just trying to salvage your own guilt. I can't keep going in circles." With a resigned sigh, she looked away, and I could tell she was weighing her options. For the first time, I felt a spark of hope mingled with fear. I wanted her to understand that this wasn't just about punishment, it was about accountability. I needed to see if she was capable of recognizing the damage she had done. After what felt like an eternity, she finally nodded, albeit reluctantly. "Fine, I'll think about it, but don't act like you're blameless in all of this." "I'll take my share of the blame. I just want you to take yours too. I hope you really think about what you want, Jessica, because I'm not waiting forever." That night I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. I had taken a significant step, and for the first time I felt like I was standing my ground. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to confront the consequences of this betrayal and figure out what my next steps would be. As I lay in bed that night, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I was no longer the victim in this story. I was reclaiming my narrative, and it was time to see where it would take me. The journey was just beginning, and I was ready for whatever came next. The days turned into weeks after my confrontation with Jessica, and the break I had suggested began to feel more like a necessary lifeline than a punishment. I threw myself into work and the renovations at my new house, keeping my mind occupied and reminding myself that I had taken control of my life. Each morning I woke up, I felt a little lighter, as if shedding the weight of her betrayal had opened up space for new possibilities. Jessica, on the other hand, was mostly silent. After our talk, she had moved into the guest room, and I rarely saw her except for brief interactions in the kitchen. I could sense her confusion and frustration, as if she couldn't quite figure out how to navigate this new dynamic. The house was filled with an uneasy tension, like a coiled spring waiting to snap. I wondered if she was truly reflecting on her actions or if she was simply biding her time. One Friday evening, after a long week of work and more progress on the renovations, I came home feeling accomplished. I had installed new countertops and even painted a fresh coat in the living room. The space was starting to feel vibrant and alive, a stark contrast to the heaviness that had settled in our own home. As I walked in, I noticed Jessica in the kitchen prepping dinner. She looked up and smiled weakly as if unsure of how to approach me. "Hey, I was thinking we could eat together tonight. Maybe talk more about things." I felt a mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to hear what she had to say, while another part still simmered with resentment. "Sure," I replied cautiously. "I'm all for talking, but I won't pretend like everything is fine." As we settled at the dining table with dinner laid out, the atmosphere felt charged. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. "So, what do you want to talk about?" She picked at her food, avoiding my gaze. "I've had some time to think about us and what I did. I know I hurt you, and I'm really sorry." I waited, expecting her to continue, but instead she just sighed, looking lost. "I want to understand why I did it. I thought I was unhappy, but I realize now that I was just being stupid. You've always been there for me, and I took that for granted." There was a hint of sincerity in her voice, but I needed more than just words. "Jessica, I appreciate your apology, but it's going to take more than that. You have to show me you want this marriage, want me." "I do," she exclaimed, her voice rising. "But it's going to take time. I messed up, and I need to figure out how to fix it. I don't want to lose you." I felt a flicker of hope. "What does that look like for you? What steps are you willing to take?" She paused, her brow furrowed in thought. "Maybe we could go to couples therapy. I think that could help us sort through everything. I don't want to just brush this under the rug." "Couples therapy?" I interrupted, surprised. It was a step I hadn't expected her to suggest. "You're serious?" "Yeah, I am. I want to work on this, I really do. I know I have to earn back your trust." I considered her words, weighing them carefully. Therapy could provide a structured environment for us to unpack everything that had happened. "All right," I finally said. "If you're committed to that, then I'm willing to give it a shot. But it's not a magic fix. It's going to take real work from both of us." She nodded, relief washing over her face. "I know. I'm ready to put in the effort. I never wanted to hurt you, but I let my insecurities get the best of me. As we finished dinner, I felt a cautious optimism settling in. We were taking steps toward healing, but the road ahead wouldn't be easy. I needed to see her commitment through actions, not just words. The next week, we scheduled our first therapy session. I arrived at the office, heart pounding as I walked into the waiting room. It felt surreal to be starting this journey, but I was determined to face whatever came next. When Jessica arrived, she looked nervous but hopeful. I could see she wanted to make this work. In the session, the therapist guided us through our emotions, encouraging open communication. It was eye-opening to hear Jessica articulate her feelings of inadequacy and the reasons behind her choices. She talked about her fear of being unfulfilled and how she had projected that onto our relationship. I listened, feeling a mix of empathy and anger as I processed the layers of our situation. As the weeks went on, we continued attending therapy sessions, and the process was both enlightening and painful. We discussed the impact of her affair, the insecurities we both faced, and how we could work together to rebuild trust. I was learning to express my feelings more openly, while Jessica was starting to confront her past mistakes. But with every session, I found myself wrestling with my own emotions. I wanted to forgive her, but the betrayal still stung. I struggled with flashes of anger and hurt, particularly when I imagined her with Jake. Those thoughts gnawed at me during quiet moments, turning my resolve into doubt. One evening, after a particularly intense session, we returned home exhausted. As we sat in silence, I found myself at a crossroads. I needed to know if I could truly forgive her, if I could move past this. Jessica, I began hesitantly, do you think we can really get through this? Can we rebuild what we had? She looked at me, her eyes earnest. I believe we can. I know it won't happen overnight, but I'm committed to doing whatever it takes. I miss the way we were. I love you, and I want to prove that to you every day. But as I looked into her eyes, I couldn't shake the lingering doubts in my mind. The betrayal still felt fresh, and I needed time to process everything. I love you too, but I can't ignore how deeply this hurt me. I just need to figure out if I can trust you again. It's going to take time. She reached across the table, taking my hand. I understand. Just know that I'm here, and I'll keep working on myself. We'll get through this together if we both want it. As we sat in the dim light of our dining room, I realized that this was just the beginning of the healing process. The path to forgiveness and rebuilding would be filled with challenges, but for the first time in a while, I felt a small flicker of hope that we could navigate this together. The journey ahead would be difficult, but I was willing to fight for our love, even if it meant confronting the demons of our past. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself immersed in the ups and downs of our therapy sessions. It was a roller coaster of emotions. One minute, I felt hopeful, and the next, I was grappling with doubt. The process was revealing not only the cracks in our marriage, but also the insecurities we both carried. Jessica was making strides in therapy. She was starting to own up to her mistakes and was genuinely committed to understanding why she had strayed in the first place. She began to express her feelings more openly, sharing her fears of inadequacy and the pressure she felt living up to an idealized version of our life. It was enlightening to hear her thoughts, but each revelation was also painful. One evening, after a session that had brought us closer, we decided to take a walk around the neighborhood. It was a crisp spring evening, and the streets were lined with blooming trees, their petals gently falling like confetti. As we strolled, we talked about everything from our childhoods to our dreams for the future. I could see the spark returning to Jessica's eyes, and for a moment it felt like we were reconnecting on a deeper level. "Do you remember when we went camping that summer?" she asked, laughter bubbling in her voice. "You kept burning the marshmallows, and I was so annoyed." I chuckled at the memory. "Yeah, but you said they were gourmet. You were just trying to save my pride." "I was being nice." She laughed, nudging my shoulder playfully. "But I also remember how we stayed up late, talking about everything under the stars. That was one of the best nights of my life." As we reminisced, I realized how much I missed these moments, how much I missed the lightness of our relationship before everything had soured. It was a reminder of why I was fighting for us. but I also couldn't ignore the shadow of her betrayal that lingered in the back of my mind. The following week, during a particularly intense therapy session, we were asked to share our individual feelings about trust. I had been dreading this moment. As I looked at Jessica, I felt my heart pound. Trust is something that feels shattered for me right now, I admitted, my voice trembling slightly. I want to believe in us again, but it's hard when I keep picturing you with Jake. It eats away at me. Jessica's face fell and I could see the guilt wash over her. I'm so sorry, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I never meant to hurt you and I hate that I've put you through this. It's not just about apologies anymore, I replied, my frustration bubbling to the surface. I need to see you make choices that demonstrate you're committed to us. That you're not just looking for a way to fill a void. We went back and forth, our emotions raw and exposed. By the end of the session, I felt drained. I wanted to believe in the progress we were making, but it was difficult to shake the ghosts of the past. Jessica's affair had left deep scars, and I was still grappling with feelings of betrayal that lingered like an unhealed wound. As we left the therapist's office, I could sense the weight of the conversation hanging in the air. We walked in silence, both lost in our thoughts. Yet, as we approached our neighborhood, something changed. I saw Jake walking down the street and my heart dropped. He was smiling, completely at ease, and I felt a surge of anger rise within me. I turned to Jessica, my emotions flaring. Do you think he's still trying to worm his way back into your life? Of course not, she replied defensively. I've cut ties with him, you know that, he's just a neighbor now. Right, a neighbor who happened to be your lover, I shot back. Stop, you're being irrational, she snapped, her voice rising. I'm trying to do better and I need you to trust me, but you keep bringing him up like it's some kind of constant reminder that I can't escape. I took a deep breath, trying to rein in my emotions. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. No, you didn't. But it feels like every time we take a step forward, we get pulled back into this mess. I'm not that person anymore. As we stood there, tension crackling between us, I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. We were trying to rebuild something beautiful, but the shadows of betrayal were still casting a pall over our relationship. It's just hard for me, I finally said, my voice softer. I want to trust you, but every time I see him, it reminds me of what happened. I understand, she said, her tone calming. But you have to meet me halfway. Let's focus on us and not on him. We can do this together. As we continued our walk home, I realized that it was time for me to confront my own demons. I couldn't continually let Jake dictate our narrative. If I wanted to move forward, I needed to let go of my fixation on him and focus on rebuilding my trust in Jessica. The following week, we had another therapy session where we dove deeper into our feelings. I opened up about my fears and insecurities, and Jessica shared her own struggles with shame. It felt cathartic to lay everything out on the table, but it also illuminated just how much work we had ahead of us. One evening, after a particularly heartfelt session, we returned home, feeling both vulnerable and hopeful. Jessica looked at me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I want to show you that I'm serious about this. I need you to believe in me again. Let's take it one step at a time, I replied, feeling a flicker of optimism. But you need to understand that actions speak louder than words. Show me that you're committed to making this work. I will, she vowed, sincerity radiating from her. I'm committed to doing whatever it takes, and I'll prove it to you. That night, as we lay in bed, I felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in a long time. We were still navigating a complex web of emotions, but we were committed to the journey. It was going to be a long road, but I was ready to take those steps with her, even as the shadows of our past loomed behind us. It was time to forge a new path together, one built on understanding, forgiveness, and a renewed commitment to making our love stronger than ever. As spring transitioned into summer, the days grew warmer, and with them, there came a renewed sense of hope in our home. Jessica and I continued our therapy sessions, tackling the tough conversations and unveiling the layers of hurt that had built up over the years. Each session felt like peeling away the layers of an onion, painful but necessary. One evening, as we sat together on the couch, I could feel the tension from earlier days starting to dissipate. Jessica was sharing a memory from our early days together, a spontaneous road trip we took when we were first dating. As she recounted the laughter and carefree moments we shared, I couldn't help but smile, reminded of why I fell in love with her in the first place. "I miss that feeling," she said, her eyes sparkling. "I want us to get back to that place where we could just be silly and not worry about everything." I nodded, feeling a surge of warmth in my chest. "Me too, but it's going to take time to rebuild that trust. I still have moments where I doubt everything." "I understand," she replied softly. "But I'm committed to this and I hope you can see that. I want to rebuild what we had brick by brick." That night, as we settled into bed, I felt a mix of emotions swirling within me. I had seen growth in Jessica, but I also realized that I needed to work on my own insecurities. I had to trust not only her but also myself. The journey we were on required both of us to be vulnerable. Over the following weeks, I made a conscious effort to let go of the anger and resentment I had carried. Whenever thoughts of Jake crept into my mind, I reminded myself of the progress we were making. Jessica was putting in the effort to change, and I needed to meet her halfway. One evening, we decided to take a weekend trip to a cabin in the woods, someplace we had visited before. The idea was to reconnect without the distractions of our everyday lives. As we drove down the winding roads, I could feel excitement bubbling within me. This was a chance for us to create new memories together, away from the shadows of our past. When we arrived at the cabin, the sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the landscape. We unpacked and settled in, and as night fell, we lit a fire outside. Sitting together on the porch with the stars twinkling above, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. "This feels nice," Jessica said, leaning against me. "Just us together." I wrapped my arm around her, feeling her warmth against my side. "It does. It's moments like this that remind me of the good things we have." As we talked and laughed under the stars, I realized how much I had missed this connection. We were finally starting to emerge from the shadows of betrayal and rediscover each other as partners. Jessica shared her hopes for the future, and I felt a stirring of excitement as we began to dream together again. The next morning, we woke up to the sound of birds chirping and sunlight streaming through the trees. We made breakfast together, laughing as we fumbled with eggs and pancakes. It felt like we were back in the beginning stages of our relationship, carefree and full of joy. After breakfast, we went for a hike, the fresh air invigorating us as we navigated the trails. We talked about our hopes, our fears, and the lessons we had learned through this tumultuous journey. "Do you think we'll ever fully get past this?" I asked, glancing at her. "I hope so," she replied. "But even if we don't, I believe we can build something even stronger than before. We've already faced the worst together and we're still here." Her words resonated with me. We had weathered a storm that could have easily torn us apart, but instead, it had pushed us to grow. I realized then that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant choosing to move forward despite the past. By the time we returned home, I felt lighter than I had in months. We had faced the darkness together, and I was beginning to see a future that was filled with hope. As we locked the front door behind us, I turned to Jessica and smiled. "We've come a long way." She nodded, her eyes shining. "And we'll keep going together." As the weeks passed, we continued to put effort into our relationship, attending therapy and communicating openly. The shadows of the past didn't disappear overnight, but we learned how to navigate them together. Every day brought new challenges, but also opportunities for growth. I could see Jessica blossoming into a woman who was not just my partner but also my ally. And I was slowly becoming the man who could trust again. Our love story was evolving, and it felt like we were starting a new chapter, one built on honesty, understanding, and a shared commitment to each other. In those quiet moments at home, sipping coffee on the porch or cooking dinner together, I finally felt a sense of hope for our future. We were rebuilding, brick by brick, stronger and more resilient than before. And as I watched Jessica laugh and smile, I knew that our love could not only survive the storm but could flourish in its aftermath. We were ready to embrace whatever came next, hand in hand.